Hello and welcome back to anyone and everyone watching. Today's time for yet another episode of Silly Season with Joe, my weekly NASCAR offseason news recap. And man, this was probably the best yet in terms of absolutely wild NASCAR headlines, including famous actor Frankie Muniz signing with Rhett Jones Racing for the full ARCA season, Jimmie Johnson releasing his official 2023 plans, Petty GMS rebranding to Legacy Motor Club, and now Travis Pastrana looking to attempt the Daytona 500 with 2311 Racing. Speaking of ARCA, there were actually so many ARCA announcements that I decided to make a separate video yesterday, not just with this week's news, but an entire 2023 ARCA Silly Season recap, where I discuss every single ARCA announcement for the upcoming season, not just for the National Series, but also for the East and West Series. So make sure to go check that out if you want to later, but now without any further ado, let's find a place to get started and dive right into this week's news for the top three divisions of NASCAR. Starting with the Truck Series, it was announced yesterday that Tyler Ankrum will be returning to the Hattori Racing Enterprises number 16 truck for the full schedule. Also returning will be Tyler's primary sponsor for the past few years, LIUNA, the Laborers International Union of America, with additional sponsor details being made known at a later date. So far, Tyler's only scored one win in this series back in his rookie season at Kentucky after the leader Brett Moffitt ran out of fuel with 2 laps to go. He finished 8th in that year's points while driving mostly for the then DGR Crosley team, and it looked like Tyler was on the verge of a breakout season come 2020 when he signed on with GMS Racing. However, that breakout never came, as since then he not only has gone winless, but only qualified for the playoffs once more. After an especially bad year results-wise in 2021, GMS released him, and in 2022 he joined Hattori Racing. He certainly improved with them, scoring 3 more top 10s than in 2021 with 8 total, and coming in an improved 12th in points. But at this point, I'm no longer convinced that Tyler has any potential to move up into the Xfinity or Cup Series. I'll give him one more year to prove me wrong, but if he doesn't get back to victory lane at least once in 2023, I'm willing to label him as a NASCAR bust. Then into the Xfinity Series, the first story this week was that Blaine Perkins will be competing for SS Greenlight Racing full-time in their number 07 car. A lot of people were understandably upset that he landed an Xfinity ride after nothing less than abysmal rookie season in the Truck Series, but hear me out, I don't think Blaine is that bad of a driver. I'm not even going to try to justify his Truck season with CR7 Motorsports, in which he had one top 20 finish and an average finish of 27.8, but whenever he's behind the wheel of a car, he seems to do a lot better. In 2020, he came in runner-up to Jesse Love Jr. in the ARCA West Series points after recording 3 wins, 8 top 5s, and 9 top 10s out of the 11-race schedule. Then, so far in his 13 Xfinity Series starts, all of which were for Our Motorsports, he won a stage at Talladega and added a top 10 and 5 top 20s with no DNFs due to crashes. Particularly with Hailie Deegan, some fans are starting to pick up now on how some drivers is not cut out for truck racing, and to me, Blaine Perkins is just another prime example of that. I'm predicting he'll do better in the 07 car than his previous driver, Joe Graf Jr., but we'll have to wait and see. The next big Xfinity Series update came from BJ McLeod Motorsports. They announced Anthony Alfredo will be competing for them full-time in the 78 car, while Garrett Smithley, who prior to this week was tapped to drive that number, will now be switching over to their number 99 car full-time. If you watched last week's episode, I talked a little bit at the end about a post on the NASCAR Reddit that correctly predicted Jeb Burton moving to Jordan Anderson Racing before it was made official, and is now 2 for 2 as they also claimed Alfredo would be leaving Our Motorsports in favor of BJ McLeod's team. Not only that, but it looks like they might be going 3 for 3 because they speculated Our Motorsports might be shutting down entirely, and now we know that all 3 of the team's original 2022 full-time drivers, Brett Moffitt, Jeb Burton, and Anthony Alfredo, are set to drive for different teams in 2023. At the very least, I think Our Motorsports will be downsizing back to a single-car team as they were prior to 2022, but with that out of the way, let's get back on track, first with Anthony Alfredo. Anthony's been through a lot in recent years, from doing pretty well part-time in Xfinity with Richard Childress Racing in 2020, to having a pretty miserable rookie Cup season with Front Row Motorsports in 2021, to just last year having a mediocre Xfinity season with Our Motorsports. He is still yet to win a NASCAR, but he's never had time to develop with the team for more than one season either. If he was a generational talent, sure, he would have won with RCR or even with DGR Crosley in his truck days, but in my opinion, Anthony is just a good driver. If he was ever given a full-time truck or Xfinity ride with the top team, he'd be contending for wins and maybe even championships. But instead, he's been given the short end of a lot of sticks. But none more so than heading into 2023, because no matter how good that paint scheme looks, no one's ever going to see it on TV unless he's getting lapped. Looking at the planned full-time driver of the 78 car last year, Josh Williams, he finished as high as 15th in points with the DGM Racing back in 2020. The best he could ever do with BJ's team was a P17. Even worse, he failed to qualify for 4 races with them. So basically, don't expect any good runs out of Anthony Alfredo anymore, except maybe on super speedways or road courses. If he somehow manages to get multiple top 10s, then I will definitely be vouching for him to get a ride with the top team, because that will be nothing short of a miracle. Then for Garrett Smithley, I'd say his goal should basically be to qualify for every race and just bring it home clean every week. The only time I see the 99 car finishing well would be on a super speedway. Because I mentioned Richard Childress Racing a little bit there, I'll talk about them next. They announced Austin Hill will be returning for another full-time season in their 21 car. So far in his career, I feel like Austin's gone really under the radar, as everyone considers him to be a good driver, but at the same time, I don't think he's considered to be in conversation with Ty Gibbs, Noah Gragson, or Zane Smith as one of the best up-and-coming drivers. However, I'm predicting that this season will change that. Already, he's won 8 truck races in his 3 seasons with Hattori Racing and 2 races in his rookie Xfinity season. But in 2022, both of those Xfinity wins were on super speedways. He was close to coming out on top of other types of tracks. Dakota, a road course, he finished second to AJ Allmendinger. At Bristol, a short track, he finished third behind Noah Gragson and Brandon Jones. In Texas, a mile and a half, he finished second to Noah Gragson. In 2023, Allmendinger and Gragson will both be out of the series, along with the driver Hill finished runner-up to in the first Atlanta race, Ty Gibbs. Basically, what I'm saying is nearly all the drivers who won over Hill or finished higher than him in points will be going Cup racing, so expect him to have a career season. At this point, I'd even go as far to put him as a championship favorite over the likes of Justin Allgaier, Josh Berry, and John Hunter Nemechek. Next up in the Xfinity Series news is from Josh Bilicki, who'll be racing part-time in the 91 car with DGM Racing. Like for his upcoming Cup campaign with Live Fast Motorsports, Bilicki will be receiving sponsorship mainly from Ziegler Auto Group, but in addition to them, Insurance King will also be returning to his car. I'd already forgotten about this, but Josh actually raced for DGM last year in a one-off race at Daytona, where he earned his best finish in the series of 9th. Besides at the big tracks, Bilicki will probably run with the back markers, so I don't have much to say as far as expectations, other than bringing the car home clean and maybe 1 or 2 top 15s. The final of the mini Xfinity Series headlines from this week is an update from Mike Harmon Racing. Mike Harmon's team has always been known as one of the slowest and most underfunded in this series, but by 2021, they were turning upwards. With 2 solid full-time drivers like Kyle Weatherman, who gave the team their first ever top 10 in 2020, and Bailey Curry, who gave them their second that season, they were no longer a joke, but rather a standard small team. They weren't all highs in 2021, though, because both Weatherman and Curry failed to qualify for a few races each, but again, overall, they had never looked better. Unfortunately, with both drivers leaving the season's end and an overall lack of funding, over the course of one offseason, Mike Harmon Racing reverted back to one of the worst teams in the series, rivaled only by maybe Jimmie Means Racing. In 2022, with their main driver Brennan Poole, they only made the field for 7 of their 17 attempts. And of those 7 they did make, they only made to the finish without mechanical failures in 1. But now the team will likely be revived to the state they were in 2021, or even better, as Gary Keller, who previously worked closely with JD Motorsports, along with Michael Clayton Sr., will be joining forces with Harmon to help with business management and marketing. The team will now go by Stage K Racing and will run the 74 car full-time with the drivers yet to be announced. And now for the Cup Series, which is where the real fun begins this week. First up, starting with Jimmie Johnson's return to NASCAR with Petty GMS, we'll get to that later. Anyway, in my episode from a few weeks back, I claimed, based on a direct quote from Petty GMS team president Mike Beam, that Jimmie would be driving the 49 car. However, apparently they just changed their mind or were trying to mislead people, because this week it was revealed that Jimmie's number will be the 84, simply a flip-flopped 48. The only sponsor that's been announced so far is Carvana, from whom we got this great-looking paint scheme they'll be run at Daytona. That is, if they can make the show, because again, the 84 machine will be an open car, meaning he'll have to qualify in or race his way in through the duels. And there will be quite a few other open cars vying for those 4 spots, including Austin Hill with Beard Motorsports, Zane Smith with Front Row Motorsports, and a third 2311 racing entry, which we'll get to later on. On top of them, there will most likely be a Money Team racing car, a Team Heisenberg car, 1 or 2 NBA Motorsports car, the number 91 Trackhouse car, and a third Colleague racing car. And according to some rumblings on social media, potentially a Nice Motorsports entry with Carson Hocevar. So yeah, Jimmie's got his work cut out for him, but if anyone can handle a challenge like this after having been away from the sport for 2 seasons, it's the 7-time champ. And now for arguably the bigger headline for Richard Petty's team, their complete rebranding. As recently as 2021, Petty's longtime team was still called Richard Petty Motorsports, but after selling a majority interest in GMS Racing, it became Petty GMS Racing for 2022. And now after Jimmie Johnson himself bought an ownership stake this offseason, it's become the Legacy Motor Club. From what it sounds like, a lot of people don't like the new name, but in my opinion, any NASCAR team that doesn't end in racing or motorsports should get a pass for creativity. Also, most definitely will start to grow on people, well, if they actually keep their name the same for more than 1 year this time. Before getting into the final segment, our weekly silly season conspiracy theories, I just want to go over a few paint schemes and new sponsors, just the big ones at least, because if I went over everything sponsor related for an entire week, things would get pretty boring pretty quick. Anyway, RFK Racing will be teaming up with a new sponsor, Aspirian Therapeutics, in a new multi-year agreement. Both of their products are cholesterol-lowering treatments, one being Nexlizet, which will be on Brad Keselowski's car for the Daytona 500, and the other being Nexletol, which will be on Chris Buescher's car for multiple races. Both of these cars look really awesome and remind me of Cody Ware's purple Nurtec ODT car. Next, B-Laster Holdings will be back with Live Fast Motorsports for 9 races on BJ McLeod's car. This paint scheme is also really well executed, the colors go really well together, and the advertising space is definitely being maximized with a new number placement. Front Row Motorsports announced 3 returning sponsors, Freight Auctions, Horizon Lobby, and Chicago Pneumatic. All those schemes look pretty good as well. My favorite is the Freight Auctions car, but the biggest paint scheme reveals this week came from Hendrick Motorsports with Chase Elliott's new Napa scheme, Alex Bowman's new Day and Night Ally schemes, and William Byron's new much-improved Raptor scheme. Let me know what you guys think of all of them in the comments. In order of my most favorite to least favorite, I'm probably going to go with the Raptor scheme on top, followed by the Ally schemes, and then the Napa one. I do still think this year's Napa car is better than last year's, though. But now, to go over all of this week's conspiracy theories, from the expected announcements to really out there predictions. Starting with the ARCA Menard series, actually. I know I said all the ARCA stuff was going to be yesterday's video, but just hear me out here. In the pre-race test session at Daytona, I noticed that Joe Graff Jr. was testing for Emerling and Gaze Motorsports in their number 53 car. And with Joe announcing recently that he would not be returning to SS Greenlight Racing for 2023, what would be a similar caliber of Xfinity team that he might have gotten signed to? Well, Emerling Gaze Motorsports. In 2022, they had multiple drivers in their full-time number 35 car and part-time number 53, but they were primarily driven by team owners Joey Gaze and Patrick Emerling. So without any further rambling, expect to see Joe Graff Jr. driving full-time for Emerling Gaze Motorsports this season. Next up are some speculations on Daytona 500 entries that I already touched on a bit earlier, one of which is the number 13 car for Colleague Racing. On Tuesday, Colleague simply tweeted out this picture of the number 13 in their typical number font, and although it could just be a 4th Xfinity car, it would make more sense for me for it to be a 3rd Cup car for the Daytona 500 for either Daniel Hemrick or Landon Castle. The next one, which I also already mentioned, will be Nice Motorsports making their Cup debut with Carson Hocevar. Around the middle of the 2022 season, Nice Motorsports General Manager Cody Efa hinted at going Cup racing and flat out said, quote, "I would like to get Carson in some races next year in Cup, and I think he's able to do it. He's capable of doing it. We just have to get the right stuff for him and do it." So yeah, that one is certainly out there in the conspiracy theory spectrum, but don't be surprised if you hear it's officially announced in the coming weeks. And finally, the biggest and wildest story, or theory rather, of the entire week in my opinion, is that Travis Pastrana will drive the 3rd 2311 racing car in the Daytona 500. This theory came in straight out of left field on Friday when trusted NASCAR reporter for The Athletic, Jordan Bianchi, published an article claiming this after he received leaks from people apparently familiar with the plans. If this is true, I would say something like this is unheard of, but then again, we just had Jacques Villeneuve spawn in real quick and not only make the show for Team Heisenberg last year, but finish a solid 22nd place. If Pastrana is actually racing, I'll definitely be pulling for him because he's one of my favorite drivers back in his Nationwide Series days, but we'll have to wait and see on that one for sure. But that's all for this week's Silly Season News. If you enjoyed this video, make sure to hit that like button and subscribe for more videos just like these. My next video will be a top 10 over the best drivers in NASCAR right now to still not have a confirmed ride heading into the 2023 season. So make sure to tune in for that in a few days here. But until then, peace out.